Hello and welcome to my channel. Uh, I want to make a short video I feel is a really important subject and is very rarely talked about. Uh, the subject I want to talk about is fear. And I want to present a perspective for you. Maybe one that you may be aware of, maybe one that you haven't even thought about. When you think about fear, I feel like fear is one of the greatest impediments to having a fulfilled life, having a path to freedom in our life, to do what we want, to freedom in our relationships. This fear covers so many aspects of our life, so it's only natural to want to explore and find ways to release fear. And just to note briefly that if you've watched any of my other videos, I mention how in order to release a feeling inside of you, of such as fear or anger, you need to allow yourself to feel it. So this idea of feeling through a feeling. So what do people usually do when they are trying to feel through fear? And if you think about the phrase "face your fears," all right, it's a very common idea. If you're afraid of something, face it head on and go towards it. And that is true to some extent. It's really important to understand what it is. So if you're afraid of public speaking, right, so practicing public speaking is most likely going to help you work through the fear. If you're afraid of heights, coming to on a high floor of a tall building and looking down might be helpful. But how often do you notice that you keep facing fears, you keep challenging them, and nothing changes? Right? I was thinking the other day, someone I pay attention to is Will Smith. Right? So Will Smith, he's a lot of controversy around recent events, but he is a very interesting person to follow. He's got a very successful career. It seems like he's been progressively getting better at his skill and art as an actor. Yet, if you look at his personal life, he has trouble in his relationships. He lost control and slapped Chris Rock. In his book and also in a lot of the videos, he shares that he has a lot of fear. And this is someone who constantly faces his fears. So for his 50th birthday, he jumped out of a helicopter. Before that, he was afraid of public speaking, I think, and so he did opened for stand-up comedy, and so he's constantly facing his fears. Yet he is still extremely afraid. All right, and this is a person who's done medicine work. He's done shamanic journeys with ayahuasca over 10 times. This guy has pretty much unlimited resources, yet it seems like he still can't get over this debilitating emotion of fear. And so what's the secret here? What is the clue? What's the secret ingredient? What makes people stay in their fear no matter how hard they try to overcome it? And this is what I want to share with you here. Now, the first thing I want to offer you guys is this concept to understand. The trauma we experience, that affects us as adults, mostly comes from our childhood. Right? Unless something terrible happened, like we were assaulted or we were in a war. Most of our traumas, they occur when we're young. And the same goes for fear. Also, what you may notice is fear is not logical. Right? So walking up to a beautiful woman and telling her that you're attracted to her, or that you would like her number, or asking for the promotion, or uh, traveling to a different country. Some of those things, there is some consequences. Possibly the woman might reject you, or even be upset with you. Same thing goes at work, and so on. But honestly, there's not a life and death consequence to this. So what if somebody gets mad at you? So what if you don't get the promotion you want? But we treat it as if it was life and death. And the reason that's the case is because this happens at a time when it was life and death. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it like this: if you are um, being born into a family that may not welcome you, for example, now if they don't want you, that's a life and death situation. So if your family rejects you, your nervous system is going to feel like you're going to die because you can't support yourself. If your family doesn't appreciate you, doesn't value you, doesn't acknowledge you, doesn't want you to be part of the group, that means that you're not going to belong. And that is, again, one of the core needs. So back in the times when we were tribes and communities, by being rejected meant you're gonna die. So those emotions of rejection are deeply embedded into our DNA and associated with life and death. So when this occurs, this is when we are super young. So when you're dealing with fear, you're dealing with a little person, and that's very important to understand. So the reason why as adults we keep pushing ourselves into situations one after another that are scary, that are uncomfortable, and yes, to some degree they work, but a lot of times what we're actually doing is we're bullying the child inside of us. So imagine this. Imagine you're afraid of heights, but your father wants you to help you get through it. And so he grabs you and he takes you to the top of a mountain and he holds you up right at the edge. He may be thinking that by triggering that fear, by confronting it in a way that he's literally dangling you over the edge, is going to help you overcome the fear. But no, that's actually more traumatizing. Right? It's an extreme example. In another case, someone trying to get you to learn to swim, and a common technique to push a kid into the water. Of course, in some cases, you sink or swim, you figure it out, but you also get traumatized. Okay? And what we try to do when we push ourselves in these intense situations is that we bully ourselves, thinking that we're going to push ourselves through fear. And the truth is, it doesn't work. The only thing that happens is that once that event is over, either you're more traumatized than before, or you've just survived an experience, and if you come back, more likely or not than not, you're gonna have the same feelings. So you can let's say you're afraid of rejection, you can go up to that beautiful woman 10 times, and yes, after 10 times maybe you might feel a little bit better, but what experience has shown is that as soon as you stop doing that, the fear comes right back. And here's why. The fear entered you when you were super little. So we're talking about from the time of conception up until 7. And more likely than not, usually between conception and age 3, 4. So you're dealing with a kid inside of you, your inner child, who's about 4 years old, maybe 3 years old, maybe 2 years old, and sometimes even still a baby. All right? So if you think about it, a person who is afraid of financial ruin, for example, when they get triggered, meaning let's say they have a huge expense, they can regress into feeling like they're a little kid, right? And then if you want to take that little kid and then bully him into some sort of a fearful state, you're not really helping the situation. So similar, like Will Smith, who keeps bullying himself into these different scenarios, nothing ever changes. So what do? You slow down. I'm gonna say that again. What you need to do is you need to slow down. What do I mean? You're afraid of heights. Okay? You have to go as slow as your slowest part. This is something that my mentor taught me a while back, and it stayed with me. And she said, Boris, you can only go as fast as your slowest part. So, for example, if you're afraid of heights and the fear is in the 2-year-old, you have to go as slow as a 2-year-old. So if a 2-year-old is afraid of heights, how are you going to treat that 2-year-old? First, you got to stand next to them, right? You got to acknowledge them. You got to acknowledge that they're afraid. Maybe hold their hand, right? Maybe have them look at that, height situation from a distance. Breathe. Take a step. Breathe. Slowly start feeling through the fear. So your movement, your action has to match the speed of the part of you that's afraid. So if it's a 2-year-old, you have to slow down to a 2-year-old speed. Okay? And only then will you able to match up to the speed of the fear. And then you'll start to notice the fear is going to be more embodied. You're going to feel it in your body. So at this point, you can feel where it is in the body. You can put your hand on it. So let's say you want to overcome fear of heights. So you inch your way closer to the edge. The moment you start to feel afraid, you stop, you breathe, you put it on a part of the body that feels scared. Right? It could be in your chest, your belly, your heart. And breathe. And you may notice you start to tremble. And ask yourself, like, how old am I here? How old do I feel? Because it's a sad experience, and I don't want you guys to do this, is to do to yourself what others have done to you. So if others have bullied you into situations that are uncomfortable, don't become a bully in your own life to your own 2-year-old inside of you. Go slow, match the speed of the fear, connect where it is in your body, breathe, and let that 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old feel through those layers of fear and terror. And imagine you're holding his hand or her hand and breathe with them. Invite your adult to be present in that process and go slow. Very soon you'll realize and notice that 1 layer is gone, now 2 layers is gone, 3, and before you know it, the fear is gone. So before walking up to a stranger that you want to ask out or for their number, imagine it in your mind, feel through the fear, take a step, sit in a public place, breathe, walk up to the person, say hi, breathe, slowly, slow down. The slower you go, the more connected you'll be with the fear, and the more layers you'll be able to feel through and process. I hope that's clear. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you in my next video. Cheers.